keeping your team motivated in times of uncertainty, times of difficulty is important whenever, even more so now than probably ever in my career. And I think I've touched on it already in a number of conversations I've had and interviews and podcasts I've done over the last couple of weeks. And for me, the key is communication. So one of the mistakes that I think people will be making at the moment in leadership roles, where they're having to furlough staff or maybe lay staff off or put them on unpaid leave or whatever it might be, is trying to beat around the bush or trying to soften the blow a little bit, and then forgetting that people have emotions and feelings and that uncertainty carries on for weeks and weeks. So it all comes down to communication. I don't think there's any point right now in being anything other than brutally honest. And I've used that phrase, brutally honest, with my team over and over again. I have to be brutally honest. This is the state of the business. This is where we are. This is the impact it's had, and this is the decision that we have to make for the best of the company. And unfortunately, that's what that means. And I don't think you should be looking to say things in any way other than factual at the moment, because it gives people the information that they need to process it and process it in their way. If they only know part of the story, or they don't understand the reasons, or they don't understand the why, it's very difficult to process that and to come to terms with whatever those decisions might be. And this has been a shock for everybody. And as business owners or business leaders or sales managers or whatever it might be, I think people understand that right now you're not the expert. Right now you are flying by the seat of your pants, learning by the day, and dealing with, it's that word unprecedented, isn't it? Unprecedented times. And so you can't have the answers. There is no playbook. There is no manual for this. And I think people are smart enough to see that and know that. And by not being honest with them, or not telling them everything, or giving them the context behind why you're making decisions, I think that you end up patronizing them, or you lose their buy-in. What people want in uncertain times is clear communication, honesty, and the respect that they probably earn as a good team member. So I would be saying that first and foremost is the most important thing. And then continuing the theme of communication, it's about consistent communication thereafter. It's one thing to be honest with somebody and say, look, we're going to furlough you, and this is why, this is what's happened to the business, and that's what we'll do. But if that furlough lasts for 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 12 weeks, what are you doing in the meantime? There's got to be a mixture of factual communication. So we're doing regular video updates, so a daily video from either myself or from some of our management staff sent around to all of the team on what's going on in the business. We're doing weekly coffee breaks and huddles where it might only be 15, 20 minutes, but it's a quick coffee. Everyone grabs a drink and just says hi, and there's no agenda. It's not a formal catch up. We do our usual Friday team meeting on a Friday afternoon at the end of the day. So that's a formal 1 hour meeting with everybody, with formal updates on the companies, updates on people's performance and achievements for the week, and celebrations, and both current staff, but also, or active staff, but also furloughed staff can join that from a social perspective, or keeping in touch. And we've also developed a buddy system. So each week, those that are still working, who perhaps feel isolated and lonely because they were a team of 50 and something, and now they're a team of a much smaller number, they've got a buddy each week that changes every week, and they just have a 10-15 minute conversation once a day just to check in, say hi, make sure everybody's okay. And it means that as an organization, we're able to spread ourselves thin across lots of people, but we've got eyes and ears across the business for helping each other and supporting each other. And I think it's about coming up with things like that allow people to stay connected and stay as motivated as they can. But I do think that communication and that honesty with people is what will keep people connected to the company, and will create organic motivation because they want the company to do well. And if you let people in, they'll come on the journey with you one way or another. If you shut everybody out and try to deal with this without their help and without the support and without their input, I think you'll struggle to keep people motivated and keep their buy-in.
I agree with Owen. I think the fundamental to this is communicate, communicate, communicate. I think over communication is probably the way to look at it. If you used to have a one-to-one with each team member once a week, you probably want to be doing that twice a week if that's within your team. So as sales leaders, as leaders of organizations, you don't have to have all the answers. I think Owen's right there, but you do need to be honest. But have multiple channels and be available. So have Zoom meetings or online webinars that people can join. They can be social. Owen touched on the cup of coffee together. It's a really good idea. We have a similar thing that we're doing over here, and people can get together socially to talk, And then we have formal meetings where we're talking to people. And I think, if anything, we're doing far more communication now than we would normally. We're making sure we're using things like Slack for instant messaging. We're using Zoom for online messaging. We've got email and phone, and all of those channels are being used by people on an ongoing basis. And I think the other thing is, you've got people, or many companies have got people working from home. And those people are in isolation. They don't really know what's happening, and they don't know how the business is going. So being available to tell them about that and answer their questions. So being on if you're the leader of a larger organization than just a team, being on those individual team meetings is really important, because somebody in that team might want to ask you about how long is the furlough going to last. You may not have the answer, but it's a question. And just in answering it and being present there is really valuable for those team members. And the people who are working, especially if they're in sales, cheer them on. Celebrate every win, regardless of what it is, celebrate, but have targets for people. I don't mean targets that you manage them out of the business because they don't hit, but things for them to go and achieve. Often those can be activity-based rather than outcome-based. So the number of people they've connected with on LinkedIn, the number of prospects they've spoken to, the number of phone calls they've made, the number of emails or proposals, if that's relevant, that they've got out, not the number of sales that have been made. Because then they've got something they can achieve every day, and they can hang their hat up at the end of the day and go, you know what, I had a good day today. I hit my targets. And the team and the leader need to celebrate those wins and do it consistently. I think there's no point in starting something and running it for 2 days or a week. This is probably 3 to 6 months. So you've got to be in it for the long run. But that communication, giving people targets and things to work for, and things that they can feel they've achieved in work, will keep them really motivated. As Owen said, motivation is important. Keep them motivated, and they'll keep them knowing that you care. And I think that's really, really important.
I think one other thing to add, all very valid points, Rich, is whatever you do, it's got to be authentic. I was talking to one of my senior team members the other day that was saying the thing that I'm missing most is that anecdotal one-on-one conversation with somebody as you're, I don't know, as you're walking, getting up from your desk to walk to the toilet, or as you go to make a coffee in the kitchen, or as I walk out for a break and I chat to the person who's sitting on the reception desk, or whatever it might be. And I think it's about finding ways to recreate the things that we're missing without it being contrived or forced, because you can put people on a Zoom call, so like chat for 10 minutes, well, what do we talk about? And it doesn't actually add any value. It's there for the sake of it. It's talking to your team and asking them how they feel they can solve those problems, and letting them come up with ideas, but allowing them the freedom to do that. So, within the team, we've put the responsibility back onto them and said, what do you want? What will help? What will help you stay motivated on a difficult day? And that might mean a bit more freedom. So whereas they might normally have some KPIs to make a certain amount of calls or whatever it might be during a day, or to connect with a certain amount of people, we've kind of torn that up a little bit and been a bit more trusting in terms of, look, have the autonomy to work how you need to. So if you're having a hard day, and it is hard to get people on the phones at the moment, and if you're getting frustrated, take 20 minutes off the phone, go and get some fresh air, go and sit in the garden, go and have a cup of coffee, and get away from the desk, because you're in the same room all day, every day, by yourself, doing the same things. And I think as employers and leaders, we have to be a bit more understanding, a bit more flexible, and a bit more agile to make sure that we're giving people the freedom they need to create the environment that they need, because we're not the experts anymore. We don't know the environment that people need in this kind of organization, because we've not worked in this fashion before. So let the people on the front line define what works best for them.